Rows, marching across the landscape like soldiers of efficiency. Every farm, every garden magazine, every extension office diagram. Straight lines as far as the eye can see. And then there's this. Same land, same climate, same hours of sunlight. 400% more yield. The difference isn't magic, it's geometry. And everything they taught you about planting in straight lines was designed for machines, not for life. The archive opens in the 1990s, in the degraded hills of Brazil's Atlantic forest, where 95% of the original ecosystem had been destroyed, where a farmer named Ernst Götsch stood in dust that once held rainforest, and asked a question that would resurrect 400% more life from the same earth. What if we stopped fighting the forest and started thinking like it? But to understand his answer, we need to go back further, much further, long before Ernst Götsch, long before tractors and monocultures. Ancient farmers understood something we forgot. The Mayans planted in circles. Their milpas forest gardens fed civilizations for 3,000 years. No chemical fertilizer, no irrigation systems, just geometry. The Polynesians carried this knowledge across oceans. Their agroforestry circles turned volcanic rock into abundance. Indigenous peoples of the Amazon still plant in spirals today, not because tradition told them to, because the forest taught them. For 10,000 years, humanity planted in curves, clusters, edges. We fed empires. We built pyramids. We sustained populations that modern monocultures struggle to match. Then came the tractor, and straight lines became the only geometry that mattered. The Industrial Revolution didn't just change how we made things, it changed how we grew them. Tractors needed straight lines. Chemical companies needed monocultures. Seed corporations needed dependency. Circle planting? Too complex for machines. Edge effect? Too diverse for patents. Forest gardens? Too self-sustaining for profit. By 1950, agricultural schools stopped teaching guild planting. By 1970, the word permaculture had to be invented because we'd forgotten there was any other culture. The geometry that fed 10,000 years of civilization was replaced by the geometry that fed quarterly earnings. Not because rows worked better, but because rows were easier to sell. What did we lose? More than we ever counted. Look at a modern monoculture field. What do you see? One species, repeating infinitely. Every plant competing with identical neighbors for identical nutrients. In straight rows, roots fight each other. They're all reaching for the same depth, the same minerals, the same water. It's not cooperation, it's a battlefield. And when a pest arrives, every plant is the same meal. No biodiversity to confuse them. No predator habitat to control them. One pest, one field, one disaster. So we spray. We fertilize, we irrigate, we spend billions compensating for a geometry that nature never intended. The USDA calls this efficiency. The forest calls it extinction. Now look at a forest edge, where the meadow meets the trees, where sunlight meets shadow, where different ecosystems touch. Ecologists call this the edge effect. At these edges, something remarkable happens. Biodiversity explodes. Species from both ecosystems overlap. Microclimates form. Life concentrates. The most productive square foot of any landscape is where two different zones meet. Your grandmother knew this, even if she never heard the term. Her tomatoes under the apple tree, her beans climbing the corn, her flowers scattered not for beauty, she said, but for the bees. She thought it was intuition. It was geometry. Every sunflower head, every pine cone, every nautilus shell. Nature spirals. And it spirals in a very specific pattern. The Fibonacci Sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Each number is the sum of the two before it. And when you map this as a spiral, you get the golden ratio. Plants use this pattern to arrange their leaves. Maximum sunlight exposure, minimum overlap, perfect efficiency, not human efficiency designed for tractors. Life's efficiency designed for abundance. When we plant in spirals and curves, we're not being poetic. We're speaking the language the forest already uses. Back to Brazil. Back to Ernst Götsch. When he started, 0.5% organic matter in the soil. Desert-like conditions. 20 years later, 14% organic matter. A food forest that feeds itself. Science didn't discover this. Science finally proved what indigenous farmers knew for millennia. The data doesn't lie. The ancestors were right. The geometry works. Let's design your first circle. Forget the row. Think in rings. Center. One anchor tree, fruit or nut. This is your sun catcher, your structure, your long-term investment. Inner ring, nitrogen fixers, legumes, clover, comfrey. These feed your tree without chemicals. Middle ring, ground cover and pest confusion. Strawberries, oregano, chives. These protect soil, retain moisture, confuse pests. Outer ring, dynamic accumulators. Deep-rooted plants that pull minerals from below and deposit them above when they drop leaves. Notice, different root depths, no competition, only cooperation. Notice, maximum edge. Every ring creates another transition zone. Notice, no bare soil. Nature doesn't leave soil naked. Neither should you. I remember my grandmother's garden. It looked nothing like the neat rows in magazines. Tomatoes grew under apple trees. Beans climbed corn stalks. Flowers scattered everywhere. I thought it was chaos. Turns out it was geometry. She never read about edge effect or Fibonacci spirals. She just remembered what her grandmother taught her. Before we forgot. Here's your first guild. 6 feet across. Enough to transform any corner of any yard. Step 1. Choose your center tree. Semi-dwarf apple. On bud 9 rootstock works in zones 4 through 7. If you're warmer, try a semi-dwarf peach or citrus. The rootstock matters. You want a tree that stays manageable about 8 to 10 feet at maturity. Step 2. Inner ring 12 inches from trunk. Comfrey. 2 or 3 plants. This is your mineral pump. Deep roots pull nutrients up. Chop the leaves 3 times a season and drop them as mulch. Add 3 garlic chives. Pest confusion plus pollinators. Step 3. Middle ring 24 inches out. Alpine strawberries. They tolerate partial shade, spread gently, and produce from spring through fall. Add oregano or thyme. Living mulch that suppresses weeds and attracts beneficial insects. Step 4. Outer ring 36 inches out. White clover. Nitrogen fixer. Living mulch. Bee magnet. If you have more space, add a few marigolds. Not. For decoration, their roots release compounds that deter nematodes. Total cost, about $50 to $80 if you buy plants. Less if you propagate. Compare that to 1 season of synthetic fertilizer and pesticides. The circle pays for itself. Then it keeps paying. Now let's go deeper, into syntropic agriculture. The word means growing together toward complexity. Nature doesn't plant and wait. Nature stacks time. In a natural forest, pioneer species come first. Fast growers, sun lovers, they create shade. Then mid-successional species move in. Fruit trees, shrubs, they use the shade the pioneers created. Finally, climax species, the big canopy trees, slow growing but permanent. Ernst Götsch doesn't wait for this. He plants all 3 layers at once. Year 1. Fast annuals corn, sunflowers, cassava provide immediate harvest and shade. Years 2 through 5. Fruit trees and shrubs emerge through the annuals. They were there all along, just waiting. Years 5 through 20. Canopy trees take over. The annuals are gone. A food forest remains. Each layer feeds the next. Each phase builds soil. Each year requires less work, not more. This is the opposite of industrial farming, where soil depletes and inputs increase. In 10, Syntropic systems time is your ally. Plant once. Harvest for decades. But I don't have acres. I have a backyard. Good. You don't need acres. One 6-foot circle provides fresh fruit for a family of 4, herbs year-round, pollinator habitat that improves your whole neighborhood, soil that gets better every year instead of worse. 2 circles? Now you have edges between them. More biodiversity, more yield. 3 circles? You're building a food forest. The geometry scales, down to a balcony, up to a farm. Start with 1 circle this weekend. Let the geometry teach you what the textbooks forgot. For 10,000 years, every generation taught the next how the forest grows. Then for about 75 years, we forgot. 3 generations. That's how quickly 10,000 years of wisdom nearly vanished. But here's what the corporations didn't count on. The geometry is still there. In the forest, in the spiral of every seed head, in the edge where your lawn meets your garden, waiting to be remembered. Every circle you plant is a vote. Against monoculture, against dependency, against forgetting. Every circle is a message to the next generation. The old ways were right, and they're still here. If you plant 1 circle this season, you're not just growing food. You're restoring a geometry that fed your ancestors. You're keeping knowledge alive that corporations tried to erase. You're becoming a link in a chain that stretches back 10,000 years. Plant 1 circle. Take a photo. Share it in the comments. Let's see how many edges we can create together. The archive doesn't close today. It continues through you. Through every circle you plant. Through every edge you create. Through every neighbor who asks, how did your garden become a forest? The geometry remembers, and now so do you.